All right. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right.
I can hear
All
me
right.
through you too, though.
Okay.
Doesn't bother
Um,
me. So yeah.
yeah. Um, I'm going to shut this off here. Uh, I want to welcome everybody who can see us. I don't know if we're actually facing each other because
We're not.
it seems to be different. It seems to be different in every screen that I'm looking at. I have way too much technology and way too little talent to be able to use it. I have to admit that my wife and my son actually do all the IT, and
Second that.
I just come on screen and act like I know what I'm doing. So um, I haven't had much time to talk to you about this, but basically the inspiration for doing this was watching some of the things that you do online, and and that have to do with history and poetry and rap and all kinds of different things. And so I realized that we have lots and lots of different things in common, but I also realized that um, we don't actually get a chance to hang out much and actually do real time talking. So the last time I saw you, basically it was just a meet and greet, and I think con vocation was
Yep.
the last time I actually got to hug people, and then
Yeah.
after that,
Yeah.
uh, we all went into quarantine and stuff. So it's been kind of weird. So like, welcome to my dinner and welcome to my house,
Yeah.
and
I love
uh,
this green tapestry that you have going on at the home. It looks just like one at my house.
yeah, yeah. And so I usually am like that. I'm the one tied up in knots. And so I wanted to ask you first, uh, because more than just being polite, I wanted to ask how you guys are doing, and I don't mean just physically, health wise, and everything,
Yeah.
but also what's going on with all of this that's going on. You know?
Right. So yeah, I mean, we're antisocial anyways. So as far as like going out and seeing people and being camaraderie in that way, it has not had a heavy effect there. We did miss our anniversary as far as going out and doing something big for dinner. We missed a
Yeah,
birthday as well. But aside from that, it's been the mental anguish of dealing with the crowd that comes into the reptile shop, right? So, I mean, you have people
yeah,
that refuse to wear the mask. You have people that want to tell you all of their, epidemiology degree that they lack heavily.
hmm
And they kind of want to, force politics into it, force everything into it that shouldn't be. And I think it's a time where we should kind of just breathe and follow the simple instructions and not give each other a headache because we already have a
yeah,
headache.
yeah,
If you think that a claustrophobic asthmatic wants to wear a mask for 8 hours in an 80-degree building that's high humidity with reptiles, I don't.
yeah,
I do though. So COVID hasn't affected us as far as like at home. It's affected us at the workplace, and that's the most anguish we even get from it. I mean, it's in a way not in affliction to us. It's just the scare. We're
yeah,
both asthmatic. That's the affliction, is the constant scare, not knowing, who has it that you're talking to. You want to shake this person's hand to strike a deal,
yeah.
do business. And so that's kind of where we're at. It hasn't affected us. We go out on our little boat on Lake St. Clair. We do our own thing anyways. So yeah, other than the workplace, it hasn't been horrible. And sales have been up like 3 times the amount since COVID. So I mean, as far as job
Really?
security, it's there
Wow.
too. Yeah, yeah. I think a
Yeah.
lot of more people
Well,
are at home, bored. A little bit of extra stimulus money here and there for some of those
mhm,
people. I think that has a lot to do with it.
yeah.
Yeah. How
Um,
about you guys
for
though?
us, it's been a blessing. We've been waiting to do things like, if you look behind me, is to see um, the things in our old house. We've got this 1910 Spanish stucco house that we
Yeah.
bought right in the middle of the hood, and so uh, uh, we've had a chance to put in all of the things that this house originally had, and
Kind of
our kids
restored
have
it to
been
its old
home.
beauty.
Yeah. So really, all of the things we've ever wanted for all the wrong reasons, we're here, but um, we're not stir crazy yet. Well, actually, I'm stir crazy, but nobody else is.
Sure.
They all go out and do stuff. In fact, we go to the reptile shop to buy crickets uh, periodically, and now we have crickets loose in our house, so that's nice.
So
Um,
you live in a nature kind of scenario. It's good
yeah,
for the
so we've got
ambiance at
that
night.
kind of that nature thing going on,
Yeah.
and so and then also because of the stimulus and everything, our neighborhood, our block has been a party for like 3 months, and so
Oh wow.
this is the this is the street that people come down from the only store. So we live in a food desert, and 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 so this is the street everybody walks down to and from the store, and so there's always a craps game you can join, and if you need to buy anything, it's right
It's
outside
all
your door.
available.
Yeah. So but it's and that's not great for the kids. We've got a lot
I
of kids
yeah.
in our neighborhood, and I think
Yeah.
that having a bunch of adults partying, even though they're pretty much harmless, it just has a chilling effect on kids who are trying to get through the summer, and most of them, are home alone. So their parents are like, "No, you stay inside." And
Right.
so pretty much the
Right.
kids have stayed all summer. So that's been pretty hard. But other than that, I think that uh, we've been doing really good. I think that Kate and I have long been prepared to live this way. I think we
Yeah.
want to, not just the lifestyle, but also we've been homeless, and we've been living on fixed and small incomes and things, and so this is something that we do really well,
Yeah.
and so we
As
eat
far as
well
coping with
and we
something.
live well. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so if it goes on a few more months, I think it's going to have a real effect on our neighbors, our neighborhood, and all kinds of different
Sure.
things. So we're
Especially
hoping
in the
that
winter when there's not so much free time
yeah,
outdoors. I feel like
yeah.
that'll have the heavy effect.
I, I really agree with that. And so um,
Yeah.
I see you're eating something there. I wanted to
Yeah.
briefly share something. And part of the inspiration for doing this is A, I miss a lot of people. B, I don't actually get to spend a lot of time out. Like you were saying, Kate and I, as a social as we appear online, we really don't go out unless we're going to a convention or a gathering or something like that. And typically we'll go to like a dozen of them throughout the summer. All the way from like April all the way to Wheatland. We usually go to Wheatland as our last festival, but we have not been doing that, and so we don't typically hang out or go out to dinner or do any of that stuff. So um, we had been planning to have people come over for dinner, so you're our first guest. But I want to show everybody right here. See, so this is my Indonesian food.
Yeah. Please tell
Um,
me what's on that plate because that looks way
Okay,
better than what I'm
so
eating.
what you just saw on this is something called gado gado, which is a peanut sauce that has things that are steamed, things that are boiled, things that are fried, something sweet, something bitter, something salty, something umami, all under a peanut sauce, which has a really complex coconut flavor.
Yeah.
There is a bami, which is a gluten-free noodle um, traditional dish, but made with corn pasta instead of wheat pasta. There is um, a little pork dish that is a I forget what the name of it is, but it's basically a stir fry. And then there's fresh veggies, tomatoes with tamarind, oranges, cucumbers, and then horseradish. So uh, that's really
And
important to have.
are you just eating horseradish?
I'm just eating horseradish right now.
Okay.
Mm.
I just had to establish
So
that.
um, but so it's a whole bunch of things that go together. And typically, when Indonesians have dinner together and stuff, it's an ancestral thing. And so you have something that is from all of the directions, and you have something that is from all of the tastes, and it represents balance. But it's also like if you were physically here, I would have something on my plate that represents your ancestors. So
Okay.
in my case, I probably would choose the drink.
Yeah.
I would have something here to drink for you, and as you're my guest, I would ask you to give a toast, or a prayer, or whatever it is that you do in your tradition, and then I honor your tradition. And so typically I'll probably do this with every dinner that I have. So you're on. You get to make the first toast, and I will
Okay.
hold my Indonesian Chardonnay up, and
Yeah.
I will go from there.
So I have it pulling up now. I wrote it earlier. I actually just translated it from the Old Norse because I'll give the Old Norse traditional prayer real quick, but I also have something so our English speaking friends, which are most of us, will be able to know what we're saying. So I apologize. I had it up and it failed. Okay. So traditionally, there are often times where when a toast is being given, you would have the scenario where you hail 3 times, and the first time would be to your gods, the second time to your kings and heroes, and the third time to swear an oath or tell a promise that you may have to somebody else, or it could be an open-ended gesture. Especially in modern times, it would be more of an open-ended gesture, and and the third would be "and to me and you and your family and mine," something like that, and then we'd skull, and then we'd drink. But more traditionally, the only Old Norse prayer that we actually have from people who were living at the time of the Viking Age would have been this: Hail dager, heilir dagsinir, hail not och nifter, oredum augum litið okerþinig, och gevid sitjondum siger. Heilir esir, heilar osinir, helsjö in flionjota ford, mal och manvit gevid oker merum tveim, och leknishender meden lithum. And this is basically just saying, hail the day, hail the daughters of day, hail the daughters of night. Look down upon us with your eyes and give victory to this sitting. Hail the gods, hail the goddesses, hail the generous earth. Give to us wise speech and wisdom, and healing hands lifelong. That's a paraphrase, but that's basically what it is. Ironically, I had to write that. I actually know the poem. I know the prayer by heart. So I had to write down the English. So here, in our more modern time, let's say, hail your gods and mine, hail your heroes and mine, and hail your family and mine. Skål.
Skål. Oh, hail.
I will say, we joked about it before we were on. I was going to be drinking out of a drinking horn, but on the bottom, there is wood, and I did not wash that wood enough. That's what he said. And I had soap down there, and I wasted a whole entire ale. So
right.
I will be plugging Lake's local hard cider. The flannel is delicious.
Let that be a lesson to you.
Yeah. Don't wash your cups.
Always scrub your wood really hard.
Exactly.
You're going to have to swallow whatever you don't, wash. So here's the deal. And people, I think we're the kind of people that walk down the street and then people cross the street if they see us coming, right? Especially if we both have our hats on and stuff.
Right.
And so like nobody would expect you to know another language. People don't
let
even
alone
expect you to know English.
Yeah.
So how do you come about?
Let alone not one of the abstract ones.
Right.
Yeah, and I can't conversate in Old Norse. You couldn't throw me a wild card, but as far as religious text goes, I can essentially tell you what it says. Yeah, for the most part. It gets very difficult when you start reading the actual original texts from Iceland, which were rewritten in the 13 to 1500s. That gets difficult because then there's mixtures of they might just put a rune that like the rune for M. They might put the rune for M, but they actually mean Mother, which is the name of that rune, and now it means man, not M. Yeah. So that can get me. But please continue.
So because that's always fascinating to me, as well as like I'm a native Dutch speaker, so I wasn't born speaking Dutch, but when I was little, my family came from different parts of Indonesia, and Dutch was the common language that they had, and had just been here for probably less than a year when I was born, and so I grew up speaking Dutch. I was in speech therapy for the first 2 or 3 years, simply because I didn't understand that everybody else was speaking a different language than I was. And so, like when you say like words like heilig and oak and that kind of stuff, it's just a lot of Germanic, a lot of Germanic and Dutch sounds and things in there, and also because people might know that I speak Yoruba. I don't actually conversationally speak it. I do like you do. I speak the praise phrases. I speak all of the things that relate to what I do. And I understand an archaic old language that is not like what they speak today. And so, and that also is full of rhyme and internal rhyme and puns and having symbols and letters and things that represent other things. So unless you're like doing it live and as oral tradition, it's really hard to give the whole sense of what it is that you're reading and stuff. And so even with native Yoruba speakers and a lot of people that I work with, even people from Cuba and Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic now, all have a fairly large Yoruba vocabulary, but they don't necessarily get the internal rhyme and the puns and the things that are based upon repetition of syllables and things, which sort of brings me to my next topic, which is something that I've always wanted to talk to you about. I grew up in the hood. I grew up in the projects, and so in the 70s, so I'm quite a bit older than you are. In the 70s, I started getting mixtapes from New York and from Detroit, and or something that was called rap at the time. And so by probably 81, I was doing spoken word poetry. I became fascinated with rap itself and started going to Detroit to a place called the Brasserie. So anybody who's seen 8 Mile knows that warehouse place. Well, that was an actual place back then, and so so I was actually doing rap when Eminem was about 10 years old, and so and then I was called back to actually see him later, because some of my friends who were still out there would say, "Oh my God, you got to come out and see this guy." And so he was a phenomenon then, and his freestyle was amazing. So my thing is okay, so how does a Viking come about doing rap? From what you just did, I mean, I think that there's an easy transition, but I don't think most people would feel that or see that.
Right, yeah. So it's one of those jack of all trades scenarios and master of none where, I won't lie, I grew up in a household, and bless my parents, but I grew up in a household where the Confederate flag was flown on the 4th of July, right? Mm-hmm. So I had to grow up in a place where there was no open hate, but there was this Southern pride scenario where I had to. It was very conflicting, right? And I knew that I didn't want my friends overseeing that flag that day, and I understood at a young age that this was not okay. But and that's probably not what pushed me into rap. But rap came before the Viking heritage scenario. Now, obviously, heritage was already there, but I was raised to basically tell people I was Lutheran if I had to, because there was no religion in the house, and there was not much culture in the house other than this is Southern rock. Listen to it, and I'm going to drink a beer while you're sitting here listening to my music. There was not a whole lot of in-depth culture and family heritage or anything like that. My dad, who would have been the main person instilling culture or heritage into me, didn't do so because he had fallen off with a lot of his family. So at 12, 13, I was a huge juggalo, hate to say it, and I was into the Insane Clown Posse for a long time, who actually rapped before Eminem. And the whole beef with Eminem and ICP started because Eminem said that ICP and Esham would be at a show while he was up and coming when they didn't even know who he was. But I was a juggalo for a while, and I tried to write music like that because I really vibed to the, I don't know if it's parental advisory here, but the I don't give a F scenario, right? The whole culture brought that out, and it was a place where you could be who you wanted to be. It was a group of people who allowed you to be completely free. And they were big on hating racism and stuff. So I really connected to this confusion in the household. Why are we feeling this way? Why are we representing this, loser of American history? While I'm over here seeing all these freedom, free, happy people being who they wanted to be. So I tried to make that music. It felt right. And that threw me right into being a rapper. And I rapped from like 13 to 18 or 19 years old or so. And I opened up for some reasonably large people. I did the shelter under St. Andrew's Hall. I opened up for Eminem's little brother. I kind of knew who he was. He used to hang out in our neighborhood at the time. And he was kind of a tool, honestly. So I didn't like him, and I actually left after I did the show. So I did it for the clout of doing the show with Eminem's brother, but I left before he actually performed. It arguably was one of the bigger shows that I did. But so I did The Shelter with Eminem's brother, and then I kind of fell off, right? I started getting into adulthood. The stress of actually having to pay for things happened, and like I wasn't this little thug anymore. And I got out of rap, and for a decade or so, I completely ignored it. And it's not that I didn't want to do music again or anymore, but I couldn't write it. I could not produce the catalyst for change that was, because I had changed. So I feel like rap gave me this ability to be free, and I became who I was, and I was confident, way more confident than I was prior to rap. And through that, I then didn't need it. I put it away, and I left it alone. As an adult, I started working with animals a lot, like as a professional. I always had raccoons at the house or whatever at the house, right? I was always working with animals, rescuing dogs with the family. But when I got into professional dog training and animal behavior, it plummeted me into this whole new thing of connection with nature. And that's where I am a small part Native American. I think that's the thing I appreciate most from a job ever, is being plummeted into a position where I appreciate my heritage and my culture more than I ever could have thought possible. And it was through working with dogs and working with animals, and now reptiles and supplying them for movies and TV and stuff. There's a lot that happened. But now, you know me as a rapper, you know me as not, well, you know that I rap anyways. You have met the new version of that. So I don't go by Gratiot anymore. I used to go by Gratiot because my family was at Houston Whittier and Gratiot, in the early stages of my life in the ghetto. We actually moved because a stray bullet hit the wall or hit the window in that home. And so now you know me as the person who writes to release frustration of my world, not my inner world, but my outer world. I have no frustration in my home. My home is my sanctuary, and I don't have anything negative to write here, but I have a lot that I feel about the outside world and how it acts. And I don't think I'm in the position to try to manipulate individuals, but I think that through poetry and through music, you can manipulate them in a suggestive manner that it's not pushy. It's not me forcing my ideas on you, because if you don't want to listen to my song, you don't have to listen to the song. So now I write about things that aggravate me, about humanity. It's not all about me and my cash and my car, and it's just generic stuff that I used to write. Now I feel like I write a lot less, but it means a lot more to me. In somewhere in between that, I found heathenry, and I, became faithful in that way. So it's a modge podge. Why is a Viking rapping? Because the rapper came first, and then the rapper came in. If that helps.
I think that, my story is very similar to that. And I think that to touch upon a whole bunch of things, most people think of rap in terms of East Coast and West Coast. And
sure.
And so the whole idea of rap coming up into the public eye has to do more with groups like NWA and stuff like that. But before that was true, the subculture of Detroit, and you touched upon a whole bunch of different things. And we talk about Eminem because he's sort of a metaphor of all of these things. So like if you grew up in Russia, you would have listened to Kid Rock, and Kid Rock more to do with Eminem than Dre does. Insane Clown Posse has more to do with MC5 than it does have to do with Tupac and Biggie and those guys. And so the scene where you grew up and the scene that I was pulled into as a I wouldn't call me a youngster, was about having a language to protest with.
Absolutely.
So, as a rapper and as a slammer, because I did spoken word and slam, that my early influences pre-rap and pre-hip hop are like Gil Scott-Heron, who I became really good friends with later on, and Africa Bambaataa. Those guys were in the streets, but they were also doing something that was reaching people. And I was really fascinated by the idea of reaching people. And like you, I think I've gone away from it for a long time. And then lately, simply because I'm trapped in my house, but also because I'm less likely to march in the streets. I have an FI file that is 2 folders thick, and spent most of my life like in Berkeley and doing protests and protesting the Seattle and World Bank, and I've been arrested a whole bunch of times. And so I'm pushing 60 now, and so I go out to protest, and I'm more worried that somebody might get droplets on me. And so I've been writing more, and typically, if you see me on Facebook, you will see that I do these long stories that a lot of people will like, and they won't even read it, or they'll reply to the title or something like that. But I noticed that when I put up something that's sort of pithy and short, like a meme, people respond.
Sure.
And so I've actually put a bunch of raps that have been running around in my head because I'm really influenced by the popularity of Hamilton, which is such a weird juxtaposition of history and protest and hip hop and theater and all kinds of different things that I grew up in. So so history is my thing, and I grew up in theater, and so if people connect with Hamilton, then I write in that style because the man Miranda comes from that style. He's not a gangster rapper. He is much more a culture rapper. People don't know that back when Eminem was called B12, he was a dad, and his raps were about trying to stay employed working as a freaking dishwasher so that he could keep his daughter alive, and that was hardly gangster stuff, and so his first albums were about his miserable existence and how
Yeah.
much he hated the trailer park and his mom and dad and stuff. And
Right.
I
Absolutely.
think that's the thing,
Thank you.
So I don't suppose you have something that you might read for us. I was saying to you earlier, I used to be able to like write anything. I never wrote it down. I would think about it, then I'd get up and I'd do it.
Right.
Like I think
Right.
all day, I'd get up and do it. I don't have that kind of memory anymore. I can't freestyle because I'm too slow, and I can't memorize because I'm too old. And so
Sure.
typically things that I do now, I write. I write stream of consciousness and I write fast. I won't edit or anything, but
Yeah.
I have to read it. So.
Yeah, I mean, as far as that goes, I used to freestyle, and I will not say, first and foremost, I was not the best, but I could keep up. I might be able to be on a beat even. My
Yeah.
freestyle, in being in my element, was nobody talking, just kind of, being able to pause in between bars and not have to keep up with the constant tempo of the metronome, whatever it is. And I
Yeah.
could sometimes, but it would be kind of overly generic, make connections, grasping at straws. Now, because I'm not constantly doing it, there's no muscle memory there for that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't freestyle anymore. I might, throw a rhyming couple bars out, and we'll laugh about it. Me and Eladani will laugh about it, but that's about it. We'll
Yeah.
fake battle. I got into battle rap pretty heavily. I got into battle rap pretty heavily and won a couple championships.
Yeah.
So we'll
That was great,
camaraderie.
by the way. Yeah.
I appreciate it. I had to get out of that though. There's so much drama. Like it can't just be the art of insult.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just be the art of insult, because if you lose, then it's I should have won. Or if it was a vote, you got your
Mm-hmm.
friends to vote, and then there's drama, and that wasn't the point. The point was
Mm-hmm.
to be able to artistically insult somebody and shake hands at the end of the day and be done with it.
Right.
That's not how it was. Just all drama, and then you get inboxes from private messages from people you don't even know, talking about what Eladani's doing to them in the bedroom. Come on, we're together 24 hours a day. You're not even making a serious threat here. So I got out of that quick, but we may get to drinking a little bit and joke back and forth and battle a little bit. And she's witty too. But yeah, I can't memorize. I can't freestyle that quick. I have to memorize my lyrics. And I find that, I'm only 31, but I find that it's a little harder to memorize my lyrics now than it was before when I was doing shows and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have, if I had to pick one thing that I've written that is pertinent to why I write, like the definition of why I write music anymore, I do have something that I could do for sure. Yeah.
All right.
Would you like that now?
Yeah, I would love that.
Well, then I will take a drink like this. Am I echoing any at all to you?
No.
Okay.
No.
So, and to anybody who is watching us eat dinner, back to back, because I think that's how it's going right now. But if you're watching us back to back eat dinner, I'll throw the lyrics somewhere, and I will be putting a music video of this particular cipher, is what I would call it. A cipher is not necessarily a song. It may be the length of a song, but just lyrics constantly through, no chorus, no bridge. I'll put the lyrics as well as I will put the link once I actually make the video. But I haven't done that. We've been too busy. So, I'm calling out for help with the rest of the country. Every face, every race, every gender is amongst me. I've been so sick of the sicknesses we presented with. Got vicious politicians and a narcissistic president. They missing evidence. It's evident they criminals, malevolently benefiting rich individuals. Not to mention the world pandemic we living through. They try to get at you with fake news. They spit at you. Stay tuned is the same tune they all use. They train you with hate to dissolve groups. Contain you in they movement, false truths. Persuade troops to aim, shoot, and haul nukes. It's all proof we all lose when they win. Let's all prove we all refuse they sins. Stop big pharma, stop privatized prisons. We the new world order, so take your positions because we got so much political friction that's causing havoc. It's creating a division that's driven by all the panic, all the savage fucking comments from Twitter to Instagram. It drives me crazy just to scroll for 10 seconds on my tablet. I put it down and I plead to the gods for help. Frustrated, grabbing every urban candle from the shelf, prick my finger, offering blood sacrifices as well, cursing Donald Trump acting angelic, yet he from hell. And even though I am a heathen and I pray to the gods of war, I would never ask for a world that's war-torn, that's plagued by 4 horsemen, where poor people are forced into more horrid floors of the apartments that they're stored in. Drugs poured into the ghetto, for sure it was a setup. Of course the source of evil's forces, they got us fed up, but they won't let us get up. Try to keep us under their knee. And yet these demons don't get the meaning when we scream and I can't breathe. Something like that. That would be
something like that.
That would be the definition of why I write music today. Yeah.
I do the same thing. I think that the catharsis of spoken word and rap itself, and also the world coming full circle to where it's a mainstream thing. People going and paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a single ticket to see Hamilton is just mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
Because especially because like the Lin-Manuel Miranda's style, his own style, as well as the styles he pays homage to in there. I mean, it's like a history of rap if you know all of these rhythms and things that he's doing, and little phrases.
I mean,
oh yeah, he's like, he's got like a thing for Tupac, and he's got a thing in there for Biggie, and he's got a thing in there for NWA, and if you know those things, as well as Eminem, that he's like giving a history of rap, and it's really clever because the battle between all of these different styles, which to most people they think of these things as the same thing. You and I rap in a very Detroit style. It's very literate. It's very internal. It's very clever. It's very word puns and all kinds of different things that don't happen in gangster rap. It's something that I find myself doing, and so a lot of people would say, because I write for a black blog site, and they would say, "You sound like Eminem," and because I've done a few things on there, and really, Eminem sounds like us. I mean, those of us who were doing that style before him, he's a product. Yeah. I mean, even when you listen to Kid Rock rapping, who predates Eminem, and Insane Clown Posse, that style, with the sort of the electro and the beat that came out of Motown and everything, those things are that define him. He's just the best at it, but he didn't invent it or whatever. So
no, he just refined it. He refined it and made it what it is
and
now.
He sped it up. I mean, I just can't even believe how ridiculously fast he is, and how clever, how deeply clever his puns and rhymes are and stuff. And so
in his interviews, often he'll say, "I was just saying a lot of stuff and saying it fast. I don't really think I was saying anything, but they thought it was witty because I was saying it faster than everybody else."
Right.
It's funny, that was like the reason, right?
But speed is part of the style. You don't see that in New York, or and like the Compton styles are like very cool, almost like jazz, and like and so
it seems like the East Coast had a quicker edge to modernizing what became rap versus where West Coast stayed very classic. And So if you hear a producer who makes beats on the West Coast versus the East Coast, at least in the late 90s or mid to late 90s and early 2000s, I could tell you if he was from Atlanta, New York, Detroit,
Yep.
Northern Cali, Southern Cali, you could really tell where they were, where the bones were of the structure that was what they were creating. Yeah, for sure.
So I wrote a sequel to the one that I posted online, and people said, would you read this out loud? And so I may someday, but I really don't ever like to do things twice anymore. I'm always on to new things. So this is a new thing, but it's a sequel to that. And like you, I'm really wanting to talk about the world and politics and things that really upset me, that set me off, and I think that I don't have the freshness to just be able to like rip this off the top of my head or whatever. But this is kind of a take on Hamilton, just sort of as I wouldn't call it a homage. I would call it sort of, we would call it a diss or a mock. And so it goes, how does a son of a bride of a Frankenstein stain on the face of humanity, slumlord Klansman, hide his identity right into a first place electoral insanity, and then he evidently compromised evidentially, the enemy of truth becomes a resident. I won't say president, because surely the evidence is that he stole the highest office, and now the freaking novice has turned our nation to a hospice, and while our dead are frozen coffinless, while he tweets how often less he gives a freaking fuck as the dead lay stacked in rows of freaking freezer trucks. How does a scumlord, whore-sucking, bore, Wharton, flunking, weevil of praxis, evil of axis, more escape the scrutiny of a cabinet that won't mutiny while he won't show his grades, he won't show his taxes, he won't show his bank loans, he won't show his taxes, he won't show his cell phones, he won't show his emails, briefings, or faxes, and then boom, he claims privilege, boom, commits sacrilege, boom, there goes that suffrage. Boom, it's enough that his boom Gestapo's in your village's troops protecting all the monuments. Oops, I meant emoluments. Oops, I meant his documents. Oops, I meant only the sole occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Haven't you had enough of his narcissistic attitude? Haven't we reached past that altitude? And it goes on.
Bro, and it goes on. What do you mean? Continue.
Yeah, it goes on. I have a form of autism that really doesn't know when to stop. And so if you've read any of my posts or whatever, you can see that, that by the time that people's eyes are rolling in the back of their head, and some of them are saying, okay, I get it. And other ones are saying, I don't get it, but I can't do anymore. You've sucked all the air out of the room, So these dinners are just ways of me not giving webinars and sucking the air all out of the room.
Sure. I get that. But if somebody's watching a podcast, they better be prepared for an hour to 3 of talking, because that's what it is. So you should do both. You should just, if you know that somebody is not equipped to deal with such a long scenario, throw a dinner in their face. But there are some people like myself, I'll listen to somebody talk for 3-4 hours at a time, especially while I'm working. So I don't think you should count that skill out as something other than a skill. Because frankly, I've sat and talked to you the few times that I've actually been face to face without constant, I won't say they're interruptions, greetings from other people. Because they're not interruptions. I love everybody who I allow to come and greet me, right? But there are times that I've never learned more in a 10-minute period compared to, with you. I tell anybody that when you come up, I tell people, you are arguably the smartest person I personally know. So forget the autism thing. Just roll with it. If they're going to walk away, they're going to walk away about anything. So rap on, my friend.
Yeah. Well, I think that I mean, I think it's unexpected, and a lot of people don't know that rap was not invented in the millennium. Um,
Right. Right.
but I also think that things are coming together now. That like this, what we're doing right now is a new way of communicating. I think that people are experimenting with Zoom, and they're experimenting with um, webinars, and they're experimenting with ways to keep their expression relevant, even though we haven't really figured out a way to monetize this. um, I think it's more important that we get the message out, and
Yeah.
that things are happening in real time. So I'm not going to wait for 3 months to get the message out because I haven't figured out a way to make money from it,
Right.
when underneath what I just did may be entertaining to you, but we're in a bad fucking situation right now,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
need to convince people any way that we can, whether
Yeah.
it be a meme, a rap, a heartfelt thing, just reposting or sharing something,
Yeah.
or even, hopefully, people who watch this may just go and say, okay, you got to see this. The inspiration from my doing this was, decades ago. It was a movie called My Dinner with Andre, and anybody who has a chance should watch this thing. I think it's free on YouTube now. But basically, it
I'm
was two
putting it on
guys.
tonight, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's these two guys talking. One of them is Wally Shawn from The Princess Bride,
Oh, great.
who's usually the sort of the buffoon or the cuckold or whatever, and another guy named Andre Gregory, who most people don't know, but it's just the two of them having the most amazing dinner ever, and that's all it is. Two guys talking, and if you watched it then, your mind was blown by the things that they were saying. And now, if you watch it, it was like, oh my God, this guy was a freaking prophet, and
Sure.
I think that um, I think about like the fact of, I'm going to have people on like you and my friend Rodney and my friend Fred and other people who I've had conversations with that go off into the ethers. Nobody's ever going to hear this conversation, and so
Right.
um,
Right.
my friend Rodney and I used to talk till the sun came up, and then at the end of that, nobody would ever know what we said, and I think that's the thing, that I really want this to be. And so I'm totally honored that you are my first guest. And also, I'm totally honored that you would share some of the stuff with us, and hope to hear, um, not just, not just rapping and stuff like that, but also I think that there's a thing where all the things we've ever done in our life is coming together,
Yeah.
whether it's, rap or reptiles, or or our religions, or whatever. They all sort of go together. I'll be talking in the future about how, um, my rap background um, allows me to do what I do within my religion. And so there is this thing that rap came out of. So hip hop comes out of African Yoruba culture, where the priests used to do praise rhyming, and it was a form of freestyle. And the opposite of that was diss tracking. And so, and I grew up with that too. I grew up in the projects and stuff. And so, at the same time, things um, that had been lost to the culture and to the religion, there are other artifacts of that just sort of stayed. And so I don't know if you grew up with this, but I grew up with the dozens, and I grew up with your mama jokes, and with,
Yeah.
all kinds of things that became rap, that became slam, that became things that we recognize today. But a lot of it was house culture and juke joint culture, that got preserved for hundreds of years straight out of Africa. And so you can
Right.
hear the rhythms and the pieces of it today, which is like when you hear Detroit style, it is really, really like Southern style rap. it is really, really wrapped around this idea of rhythm, of having not a disc jockey, but having a band, having a juku drumming
Right.
behind you, and you're the master of ceremonies because you're the priest. So the MC was the priest, and so and you hear that in Detroit, because Detroit comes from the South, all
Oh
of that
yeah.
comes from.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wish we had hours more to talk about different things, and
Sure.
I have a feeling that we'll probably want to do this again.
We will.
And
I especially
we,
Eladani definitely wants to jump on one.
yeah, we have
Either
fascinating
alone
ladies who
or
probably,
with me. But yeah,
who,
she
yeah,
definitely she wants to join in.
yeah. Well, they probably have a lot more to say and a lot different ways of saying it, and so.
Sure.
So I would love to have a double date with you guys, and we'll do that in the future. Um, but I want to thank you for sharing yourself, and I hope that we can do much more of this
Yeah.
in the future. And also, I want to thank you for helping me sort of refine this format. And I think we're just
Sure.
growing. I mean, first of all, I'm probably pointed in the wrong direction, so we'll
Yeah.
figure out the technology of this. Yeah. So I'm
However,
sitting
we have to
here
do it.
like some rude ass motherfucker staring at the wall, at dinner and
Yeah.
talking to the wall with you at my back. But I think that I, I really I really want people to understand that we are so much more than what they think and what they see and all kinds of different things. But also, we live in a culture where people um, are used to like looking at this and being able to comment and being able to heckle and being able to, when
Manipulate.
the the oral tradition was really about watching somebody just channel something or watching two people talk to each other, and so I really really want to thank everybody who's out there for helping us recreate listening as an art. I want people to like watch My Dinner with Andre, as well as Anthony Bourdaine, who's a huge hero to me, um,
Yes.
and bridge the idea of culture and food. And someday I'll tell the story of how I got to spend a week with him and Michael Simon in Detroit, and just listen to them at dinner.
I mean,
And
how
that
long of
was
a
so.
story is this? I got 10 minutes.
Oh,
I'm just
okay. Well,
saying.
okay. So if you look at my food,
Yeah.
my food always looks good. It doesn't always taste good, but it always looks good. And it's because I was a food stylist for many years, and
Wow.
so and was really worked a lot in Michigan. And so a film crew, back when the Food Network was just beginning, came into Detroit, and they were looking for a food stylist, because they were on really short um, budget and short time, and shooting in a restaurant that hadn't been built yet. So it was an empty shell of a restaurant. So so the guy who was building the restaurant was a guy named Michael Simon, who went on to be one of the Iron Chefs, and he was a big deal in the Food Network. But back then, he was like totally nobody. And Anthony Bourdain had this show that was sort of the beginning of what we think of as his show. And this was one of the shows that actually got him fired. And so they hired me to like walk around with them and do the shopping and do the cooking and all the prep and stuff. And so I was a food stylist that specialized in creating food that could actually be eaten on screen. So not
Okay.
like tricks and stuff. And
Yes.
so also, um, I also was a food stylist that could be let go and just cook. Um, and so, because I was a sous chef at one time. And so Michael Simon hired a crew, and they needed a food stylist who could do this, and they actually flew me to Detroit. And so for like three
Because
days,
you
I
were
just
where?
hung out.
Where? I'm
What's
sorry.
that?
Where were you? Where were you?
Oh, I was in Big Sur at the time, and
Okay.
so, but I worked with this crew and these guys, these shooters, um, who were specialists in shooting food shots in West Michigan and in Detroit and stuff. And so they hired me because they knew I could do this kind of stuff, but also because I could keep up with the pace of what these guys were planning on doing, because they were actually going to cook and do something for a restaurant that didn't exist yet. And so I spent like 3 days with them, and they had dinner, and I just sat with them at dinner like every night, and then we cooked the food on one night and shot it, and then we shot them just talking the next night, eating the exact same dishes as if it were one night, you
Okay.
know. So it
Okay.
looked like they had just cooked the food, and really
Yeah.
I had cooked all the food, and then I cooked it all again, and then we recreated it so that they could just sit there and talk. And so they talked for like 6 hours, and he was trashing Elton Brown, and he was trashing Martha Stewart, and he was trashing Iron Chef, not knowing that the network had just bought the rights to Iron Chef. And
Wow.
there was this version of Iron Chef out at the time with William Shatner, and it was the most horrible thing you'd ever see. But
Yeah, I couldn't do
Shatner,
that.
right? So Shatner was the chairman, and they were mocking him and imitating him. Unbeknownst to them, the network had just bought the
Wow.
rights to. So, so they couldn't air that whole episode, um, because it was just these two guys getting drunk and trashing
The
all of the
network,
things
I
that
mean.
the network was doing. Ironically, Michael Simon became an Iron Chef and made his reputation traveling with the guy, the martial arts expert that they hired as the new chairman, who
I was
was
going to
this
say, it wasn't
also.
with William then.
No, it wasn't with William Shatner, but it was this equally bad overacting guy who tried to act as Japanese as he possibly could. I mean, the whole concept of Iron Chef was overblown and everything.
Sure.
But the inspiration to me was to just sit there for like 4 days in a row and just be a fly in the wall and shut my mouth and listen to these two guys talk, about everything.
Yeah.
They knew everything, and they were talking about ancient Greek history, and they were talking about food, and they were talking about protest. They were talking about the riots in Detroit, and they were talking about the Renaissance in Cleveland, all kinds of things.
This had
Because
to
Michael
be
Simon.
back then. This had to be back then,
Oh,
right? I
yeah, it
mean,
was it was back then, yeah. And so I had stopped being a food stylist and lived in Big Sur in the early 2000s. So after 9/11 is when it was, but
okay.
before the Food Network became a big thing, and
Okay.
before Anthony Bourdaine got fired by the Food Network. He was supposed to be one of their first stars. But what an amazing brain, and what an amazing man, and what a not just a horribly deep thinker, but also such a compassionate and layered
That was
person.
the word I was going to describe him as. Yes.
Yeah,
Just compassionate.
and just such a tragedy that he would have committed suicide. I can't even fathom what kind of pain
Yeah.
he was in.
Arguably, right?
Um,
I mean, we
yeah,
don't have
yeah,
so much time, but arguably committed suicide.
arguably for
When
sure,
you're
but
about
also
to
like
release a whole pedo
we
ring,
don't
and
know.
we don't
Yeah,
know. We don't know.
I mean, it's like he was on the verge of big money and big contracts and big. There was like I just
Yeah.
he was sort of a Food Network Jeffrey Epstein. It's like
Exactly.
why
I
would this
mean,
guy why would this guy commit suicide?
yeah.
So yeah, that's
Yeah.
just
That.
mind blowing.
And isn't it
And
even
we
more
don't know.
mind blowing that the world we live in is that there's a potential that X
Mhm.
amount of all of these heroes and/or important people either exposing or being exposed are
Mhm.
dropping.
Yeah,
We're not going to get into that now, but man,
no. But if you
it
think about
blows me
it,
away.
because I have this sort of meritocracy with my heroes that I don't expect them to live forever. But
Sure, or be
when I
perfect.
see right, when I see people who are arguably um, heroic and human at the same time, I don't want to see Garrison Keeler have to quit. I don't want to see, Al Franken have to quit. I want to see Trump have to quit. I've never
Yeah.
wanted a person to die in my life. And
Now
when
that's
I
our
just look,
president. You calm down now.
right, well, I won't say that I would pull the trigger, but
No, no.
when I was young, when I was in college, our philosophy professors and psychology professors would say, if you knew who Hitler was going to be when before, and you met him and you knew what he was going to do, would you kill him? And we're all like, no, of course not. We're all moral people and we're all whatever. And
Yeah.
now we're like in 1932 Germany and we're watching it happen all over again. And every day I watch 1,000 people die. And I thought, if I could stop that right now and only 500 people died,
You'd answer that
you know,
question differently.
I would totally answer that question differently. And
Yeah.
I think that it makes me want to write the things that I'm writing right now. It makes me want to
Exactly.
convince people to at least vote. If you can't buy a sniper rifle, vote. You didn't see that or hear that here. I'm just
Right.
quoting that hypothetically.
It might be
But
easier to buy a sniper rifle when you're closing down a bunch of lower living voting stations, etc., in southern states.
well,
But
yeah, and I think that we can't put it all on one person.
no,
There
no,
are
no, no, no.
enablers. There are people who are the recipients of privilege and the recipients of corruption and all kinds of different things. And what impresses me about that, to bring it back to us, because it's all about us, is when I think about you know nowadays we use words like influencer,
Yeah.
but I
Which
I want
unfortunately I use that term as I do get
yeah.
paid promotion for doing things like that. But go ahead.
Well, I look at things and I see, for instance, I really admire the stand you took within the facets of your religions and within the Scandinavian based um, real religions as well as the neo religions.
Yeah.
Um,
Neo
and I
being
say
the biggest
neo in the
problem.
same way, right? Neo in the same way that liberals are not neoliberal and that Nazis are not neo-Nazis, that neo is the dog whistling term. I
Yeah.
really, really admire the way you called that out and influenced that, as well as took a very moderation and a, a very logical tone to actual history and actual
Sure.
recorded history and actual genetics and the actual genealogy and the trace diasporas of those people that couldn't possibly support the kind of racism and hatred that is being put on them right now.
Yeah, it's truly a shame how most of them act, because I guarantee you do a 23andMe, Ancestry, whatever DNA test, and you
Yeah,
are not 100% Scandinavian because you are not
yeah,
a Neanderthal. I mean, there's
hmm
there's a different species that existed in this area before you
yeah,
even got there as a Homo
yeah.
sapiens. So it
Well,
really frustrates me when racism is put into a faith like this one. There's no room for it. There is no room
yeah,
for
yeah,
it. And I don't think that there's, in the modern world, there's no room for it anywhere. I'm not saying that it is
yeah.
okay somewhere and not somewhere else. But when you are a nationalist, I understand you're proud of your country. That's one thing.
Mhm.
It's a bad term to give that proud of your country scenario. A patriot is not a nationalist in my eyes, but when you are when you are giving me death threats, when you are telling me that I can't show up at this festival in Indiana, Ohio, etc., because I am okay with who you love or I'm okay with who
Mhm.
you are as a person, that's
Right.
ridiculous. And you talk about the history. We're talking about kings who would adorn themselves in jewels from India and glass from India and silks from China, and there is no better way to show how great your tentacles go out into the world
Mhm.
than to be ethnically diverse in what
Mhm.
culturally diverse in what you portray yourself as. If I was a king in Norway, and if I united Norway like King Harald Finehair, I
Right.
would be draped in silks and beads from India and whatever I could get from the Horn of Africa and whatever I could achieve in knowing not only what their culture or their fashion was at the time. I learned of new gods. It was exciting for a king to learn of new gods, of Jesus Christ,
Mhm.
of Ogun, of whoever they learned of. It was riveting. It was riveting. And to be in a modern sense and be so ignorant to think that you know everything because you watched a Vikings TV show, because that's where I think a lot of this new tradition stems from. Um,
Mhm.
Granted, I call myself Ragnar. It's not my birth given name, and I wish it was a different name that everybody knew me now by, because you assume it's from the Vikings TV show. It isn't.
Mhm.
It is very near my real name. Ranulfr would actually be my real name in Old Norse, and that's just so hard to tell anybody to pronounce. So it's Ragnar. But yeah, I mean, I don't get it, and I'll die on that hill. And I don't need a community for embracing my gods and your gods if you want them, your gods if you want them. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
sick of who can embrace what in the kaleidoscope of what is faith
Right.
and
Right.
spirit and etc. It's ridiculous.
Well,
It
I
is.
see it everywhere. I mean, I mean, I've been told that I'm not black enough to be an African traditional priest,
Sure. Sure.
and that there are no black people from Indonesia, and that we didn't have
Right.
slavery. And I also know that there are people who believe that the Celts are as white can be, when the Celtoid people were part of the Greek Celtic Empire, and that the vast majority of them, from Santa Claus on down, they were
Dark.
black. They were
Yes.
ethnically black, and
Yes.
so and
And a white
came up.
Jesus, come on. I mean, a white Jesus. That's probably the
Oh,
ringer for me, honestly.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that we have a tendency to project onto our whoever our gods are, and assume that the non corporeal had some sort of melanin or not, and that's
Sure.
just kind of a bizarre idea to me. But like Kate, if Kate were here right now, she would talk about how Isis and Astarte and Ashra and all of those met the Celtic, and we're all the same people, and that if you're a Catholic that worships Our Lady of Notre Dame, you are also guilty of worshiping Isata and
Yeah.
all of these things that then went up into the Scandinavian countries and became also enmeshed with their ideas, because there wasn't a Bible and there wasn't a Pope and there wasn't, they weren't national borders. There were
Right.
people who married and said, oh, well, this person is like this person, this God is like that God, this energy is like that energy.
Yeah.
And it made much more sense when our religions were encoded in epic poetry, in puns and in runes and in the sounds of our voices and in the things that, that if you are reciting the lineage of Isis and Isata and Asiet and Astarte and Ashra, and that linguistically there is a rhyme that's going on that passes down this lineage from woman to woman to woman. And even though the men have become monotheistic and linear and dogmatic and orthodox, the women are passing down this thing. And that's kind of the hope that I have right now, is that when I watch the Democratic National Convention, uh, I look at all of these women and think about what's going to be possible in the next 20 years.
Yes.
Should the world be handed up over to them, and showed me this thing.
Tragically, when there was heavy Christianization of many,
Mhm.
what we would call now pagan Europeans, it
Mhm.
was important to destroy the
Yes.
oldest women you can find. Go to the village and
Yes.
destroy the women, because they are the storytellers. They are the culture keepers. They will be the
Mhm.
one who allows the village to live on in the homage that it will. I mean,
Right. Right.
men don't care. I mean, men didn't care who they prayed to, so
No.
long as there was power involved. Tyr is the cognate of Zeus. I mean, Zeus in Greek mythology was the main guy,
Yep.
and Tyr is a lesser Aesir god in Norse mythology. Why? Because Zeus wasn't a warmonger against people, but
Mhm.
Odin was. Wodan,
Yeah.
Wodanas, they were not. But
Mhm.
Odin, we're not saying chicken or the egg here, but Odin is the
Mhm.
power of kings, and it is very similar to the power of, God in the Christianization as well.
Right.
It blows me away when people think they know so much when they really have no idea that Odin was, for more or less, a cult among
Mhm.
the Scandinavians who hailed way more to Freyr and Freya, or Throya and Freya and Thor,
Mhm.
right? I mean, those were the in-home gods. Odin was just the king that you never saw. Odin was the one who had you die with, valor in wars to promote what your king needed. So again, I do hail to Odin, but in the same respect, the way that the word of Odin was potentially manipulated for men to follow kings is
Mhm.
just as bad as the Christianization of any place that was prior not Christian or Catholic. It is wild. It's the problem with learning is you get a little bit of knowledge and you think you know enough, but you have no idea what you don't know. Now, Neil
Right.
deGrasse Tyson talks about this in astrology and astrophysics, but it relates to any facet of your life. If you jump on a bandwagon or you get excited and want to learn about something, you might want to really be humble in that port until you realize where the land and sea is, where every buyer seller is, where everybody is
Yeah.
in accordance to this port that you've gone into. Because if you stumble across the wrong street, stumble down the wrong street, somebody's going to hand it to you. And I think that I will die on that hill handing it to people as nicely as I can
Mhm.
about being wrong about the racism and the and the
Yeah. Yeah.
and the nationalism, in Old Norse or modern day heathens. Asatru oftentimes is the symbols are being taken from us and
Yeah.
manipulated in such a way that they're used on Nazi flags, etc. Majority of us who are the people in the middle of Scandinavia in the Viking Age versus the ones going out and dominating silver and gold at monasteries, we are the people who are holding this religion, holding this faith together for the better of people. I I am hospitable. I am, able to help or if I am able to help, I will help. The cult of Odin was
Mhm.
not like that. I mean, the Vikings, we call it the Vikings. The Vikings were the only people going out and slaying people for silver and gold. And yes, it was because we are from poor areas of very nutrient poor and iron poor areas that we have no foothold in the world trade as it was. So we stole. But that's the one thing that they hold on to, right? That's the one thing that is interesting to people is the Vikings, how savage, how
Mhm.
barbaric. They weren't. They weren't.
Mhm.
And the manipulation of nowadays to then probably is, a lot of TV and movies probably is at fault, unfortunately. And as much as I love how riveting all of these shows are, I'm a huge fan of all of these shows, but I know
Mhm.
that it's a show, and I don't take my faith or my heritage from a
Right.
show. I think media has a lot to do with why we are the way we are. So divided, yet we are more connected than any other time on the planet.
Well, I think that the metaphor of that is, I mean, because there's a certain amount of imperialism and genocide that can be associated with Christianity as well, and the Egyptians were not innocent, and the Nigerians, the Yoruba, were not innocent. In fact, we were the slavers before the Europeans came here, and when we ran out of slaves, they just took us instead.
Right. With the transatlantic slave trade was not originated from Europeans going out in the field per se. It was going and seeing slave masters,
Yeah, they would go to the ports to.
Not that
No,
that's okay.
it's not okay. But my ancestors are from the prisons at Ghana, and so the Bourdaine families ended up being brought to Indonesia, to my grandfather's island. But the inhumanity to man was happening in the 14 and 1500s before Columbus came, and so my country had black slaves before Columbus even found this particular piece of inhabited property. And I think that the metaphor of all of that, though, is that within religion and within culture and within nationalism is this idea of power and imperialism and the ability to take and the ability to kill, the ability to rape. And so all of that is found within what has become an imperial presidency, a fascistic presidency, and a presidency that is not operating out of some vacuum in terms of what his beliefs are for himself and about himself. It is supported by dominionism. It is supported by prophecy. It is supported by manifest destiny. It is supported by the historical inhumanity and genocide upon people from other countries and upon people from this particular country who are natives, as well as the whole 400-year history of slavery itself. That Trump is more like George Washington.
Of slavery we're talking about. This has been going on since BC.
I mean, if you think about BCE, yes. When you think about that idea, I'm an archaeologist and a paleontologist.
Yeah, I appreciate BCE.
So I appreciate BCE. That what you see as as our government itself, not just one crazy individual, but a government itself abandons science, abandons BCE for BC, and abandons the facts, abandons the objective preponderance of evidence and proof that we have about things, not because they disbelieve it, but because if they can hold off the effects of what it takes to end those things, they can grab the last percentages of what is left after they've literally, within the last 20 years, taken 85% of all of what is available in this country. And if you extend it to the top 5% of wealth getters, it becomes like 90%. And I think that the ability to grab the last 10% is being fought for right now. Unfortunately, they're enlisting the people who are affected and are going to take it and get it the worst. And
because there's not another option,
No. I mean, I think
very limited options.
We saw this at the Civil War, and we saw this at the turn of the century, and we saw this, in the 1800s when the country was being formed, and George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and all those guys, they weren't nice guys. Andrew Jackson was not a nice guy, and And we can even get into Abraham Lincoln, but
Right.
essentially we're at this place where this is the truly last stand of the fascistic, autonomous, privileged
Land
white
grabbing.
man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Land
yeah.
grabbing.
And so, you know, land grabbing is now pussy grabbing,
Yeah.
and I think that racism and misogyny are being fought about in the streets right now, simply because we have to rise up, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that my friends who want a revolution, but they think that socialism is that revolution, don't understand that. I've been a socialist for 40 some years, since
Yeah.
the first vote I ever had. And that revolution has taken 40 some years.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when Bernie replaced the mayor uh, of that little town in Vermont, and he was young, and he was going to replace the old guard, and he said, the revolution has to start, and the young need to take over, and I'm taking over, and now
Yeah.
he's the old, you know. Um, and so way back then, Gil Scott Heron was saying the revolution would not be televised. And what he meant by that is we need to get out in the streets. And what he meant by that is that we need to take action. And if you listen to John Lennon saying, you say you want a revolution and you read the lyrics of that song, these guys were saying that 40, 50
Yeah.
years ago, like
Right.
1968, 1972. And they're long dead, and we're still thinking about a revolution.
Yeah.
You know, um,
Yeah, nobody
so I
saw the
think that,
Civil
like,
War until it broke out. I mean,
no,
there was
no,
that tension of the tectonic plates
yep,
until it popped, and we're
yep,
at that pop point. I think.
we're
You
at
know.
that, yeah. And I think that when John Kasich the other day said we're at an inflection point, he
Yeah.
didn't mean that as a euphemism or a metaphor.
No.
Here is a conservative white ass Republican joining the other side and saying this is going to happen,
Yeah.
and person after person after person, you know, who is a student of history understands the danger of what's about to happen. And
Yeah.
Um, I think that people aren't listening because science and politics and history have gone out the window. And I think that so many of the voices that we're hearing are going to have to come from rap, and they're going to have to come from the things that no longer are. Um, they're no longer parts of culture that we appropriate. They have become appropriate culture because they're the only thing that speak to our children. They're the only thing that actually makes sense. And
Yeah.
the same impulse that makes you a gangster also makes you a revolutionary.
A hero.
You
Yeah.
know? Yeah, yeah. I
And
mean,
that's where, I
the
mean,
Tea
even if you
Party.
look at, like, the Crip Blood scenario, this was all
Yeah,
formed from Black Panthers, from pushing for change. So
yeah.
yeah, it got spun out of hand, and now we have gangs in a power vacuum in in Southside Chicago, and we have
Hmm.
gangs in a power vacuum on the West Side, and those things will happen forever. But there was a reason we started. There's a reason we started, and or as a white person, I should say they, because
Hmm.
I have white privilege. I am white, and I've
Right.
seen cops let me off with shit that shouldn't let me off with shit, and I'll take
Mhm.
it. But I do appreciate that, and I do understand that, and I fight for everyone's rights aside from my own. But
Yeah.
again, there was a reason that gangs started. There was a reason that all this started, and we're seeing where that is a hero's spot now, where we need
Right.
these people. I've seen videos of Bloods and Crips tying their bandanas together for the first time in
Mhm.
30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. It is incredible to see two people who would have their, the opposer's mother crying at a funeral without, and that'd be a notch on your, a notch on your belt.
Yeah.
Now they're really realizing the fight is not with each other. And that is the
Right.
problem with a lot of us. We're so angry and we're ready to fight, but we're not fighting the right people. We're not standing
Right.
up for the right people. It's incredible. It's incredible. And arguably,
Well,
I mean, we want to be so separated from animals, right? We want to be, we're above everything. We are the divine animal, if you will. If we are, then we need to separate ourselves from the chimpanzees that we are
right.
relative to. Chimpanzees will commit infanticide, war against each other just for territory because they don't realize they could just go this way instead of this way.
Mhm.
They're, there's this linear perspective of I have to dominate in a chimpanzee or gorilla, and we're stuck in that
Yeah.
because I'm sorry to say we're not 4,000 years old on this earth. We came from these common ancestors as chimps do, and if we
Right.
study chimps, we should do the opposite of chimps and be altruistic to the teeth, lined up for war in the positive manner. Deliver onto every enemy of humanity what is deserved and rid ourselves of it. I'm not talking about individuals mourning for a loved one when that person was evil. I'm talking
Right.
about eliminate the philosophy entirely. Why are we still like this, right? I mean, it blows my mind. It blows my mind. But people don't
Well,
know what media doesn't show them. If it's not right in front of your face, you don't know how close you are to animals that viciously tear each other
mhm.
apart. You don't know how short of a time back it was. If you're 55 years old today, you were alive when African Americans couldn't get married. How about that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It just blows me
It
away
is.
how
It
short
is.
of a
It's
time.
crazy.
Yeah,
I think
it's crazy.
that using an animal metaphor is not only appropriate. I also think that, I mean, we're not like chimps and bonobos. We are chimps and bonobos. I mean,
Yes.
I think that genetically speaking, my degree is in cladistic evolution, and that's the
So you know.
evolution that explains, yeah, how close we really are. And when you look at the anomaly that creates the kind of survival pressure upon a primate that no longer has any um, that has any pressure on it. In other words, they're all at the top of their food chain. That they have developed this this need to create drama, this need to create need, this need to create the illusion of being, this paranoia that makes them eat
Stress.
their own
You think you
children,
need
that
this? The
makes
brain
them
wants stress.
right, that makes them cannibalistic, that makes them, when you no longer um, need to hide in the trees and you can outrun everybody in order to stay relevant as a species. We create drama, and that drama is called power. And
Yep.
so when we look at how we group together and how we separate from each other, and um, how family has now moved out into species, we are just hairless apes. We
In
are,
general,
we are,
yes.
yeah, yeah. We're not more refined than a bonobo or a chimp. We simply
Especially when
have
you're the president.
worse tools. Yeah. So if you think about it, like Kate and I have become really fascinated by our feral cats. We feed feral cats out here, and we realize that the inability of cats to bond with humans, or their aloofness, or sometimes their weirdness, or whatever. We're watching a feral mother, actually raise her children and raise them um, into cats
Exactly what they
that
should be.
are doing what they actually should be doing,
You're right.
as opposed to being ripped away after 4 months and having PTSD and becoming totally dependent on us, or becoming totally hateful of us. It's like,
Yeah.
cats as slaves or cats as slavers is not natural. And I think that what Jane Goodall was talking about, um, was the idea that this artificial situation that had been created around, um, creating borders around chimpanzees, was creating this pressure and creating this drama and was creating this suicidal extinction event that was making them kill themselves.
Yeah.
And so there was this essentially natural animalistic thing where creating extinction was the thing. And so if you think about that, then we're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like we're thinning the herd by world war, by overpopulation, but we're creating all the kinds of artificial things that create an extinction event. And so dinosaurs are my big deal.
Me too.
And so sea reptiles, actually, marine reptiles from the Hell Formation. And the thing is that gigantism, the giant mosasaurs and the giant T-Rex and all of those things were because we grew out of proportion to what the environment and sustainability would hold. And so when you look at the Earth from air, you see we have become a cancer on the Earth, that
100%.
we don't live within the ecological footprint of what's doable for humans. That we actually deforest and we denude and we rape the environment to the point where we now have gigantism.
Yeah.
We have unsustainable gigantism, and that we are at an extinction point that is existential.
And we'll
It's
swallow
like
everybody with us. I mean, we'll swallow every
we
species
can't
with
take
us.
we can't take 4 years of Trump because the environment only has two. And we can't take another 4 years of fossil fuels. We can't take another 4 years of people killing each other, because at some point they're going to fight back, and at some point it's going to turn into a war and not a revolution. We're not going to revolve back to anything. We're going to evolve into a survival of the fittest situation um, that defines racism as a predictor of change. And I think that is not a new thing. And we
For
saw it
sure.
with the Mayans, the Aztecs, and we saw it the Egyptians. We saw it with the Yoruba culture, and now we're seeing it with ourselves. It's just we don't have any ability to recognize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sir, this was a wonderful dinner. And
Yes.
I am going to have to sign off, unfortunately.
All right.
But yeah, we're going to have to link up and do this again. This is a wonderful idea.
All right.
We're going to have to link up and do this again. I think we're spot on with how
right.
with how we think about this current state of the horrible world that we have to be involved in. And
I promise
really
to face you the next time. And love and best to Eladani, and
absolutely.
And you guys just keep doing what you're doing over there and holding down all the forts. And
for sure,
we hope to see you guys in real flesh and blood time. And I hope anybody who's out there listening and wants to become part of conversations and stuff. This is not a patented idea. I hope we all start having dinner with each other and watch and listen. And so I appreciate your voice, and I appreciate your passion, and let's do this again.
We will. Yep.
All right.
Our better halves involved, because I will say we've got. Go ahead.
I said I just want to thank everybody out there who was watching at this time, and let's do it. Yeah, let's do this again, and so I'm going to end right now. But this is available. This is archived. So for those of you who didn't take notes, because I know this was like a fire hose of information, or because you all want to rap along with me next time, that we do this again. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Love everybody out there. Thanks, brother.
Hello, everybody. Have a good one.
You too.